Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just under a minute. We're just waiting for everyone to get settled. So nice to see the waiting room, or the attendees list rather, filling up so quickly. Lots of interest in this webinar and in this topic. Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome to today's Webinar Wednesday, entitled Everything About Residents Involves Residents. I'm your host, Stephanie Ventura, OARC's Director of Education, and I'm so pleased to welcome three co-presenters: Chloe Young, who's OARC's Evaluation and Quality Manager. I'll get into a more in-depth introduction in a few moments, but just wanted to introduce the folks you see here on screen. Gail Ramsden, who's a resident leader at her home and also a board director with OARC, and Jim Gilhooly, who is a resident leader in his home and a board director with OARC. So before we get into the content of our presentation today, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. Let us now pause as we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today, from wherever we are virtually participating in today's meeting. Let us take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. We do this to affirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this nation home. Let us now join in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and ongoing challenges of the present, and to consider how each of us, in our own way, can move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Just some housekeeping before we get started. You'll notice that the chat feature is disabled during this section. However, the question and answer box is open, and we'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation, the fireside chat portion of this presentation. We've also received questions ahead of time, which we will get to as well. This webinar is being recorded, and a recorded version will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel and emailed out to all participants after this webinar. And lastly, right at the end, when you close your Zoom window, you'll receive a pop-up screen asking you to complete a survey. Your feedback and suggestions are always so appreciated, and we look forward to reading them so we can improve our offerings for you. And lastly, we can actually go ahead and get started. So OARC, if you're new to us, the Ontario Association of Residence Councils, we are the only association in Ontario mandated to support the formation and sustainability of residence councils in long-term care homes. In addition to that important part of our mandate, another part of our mandate includes supporting, strengthening, and sustaining residence councils so that long-term care residents can participate in decisions affecting their daily lives and the operation of their homes. And this presentation today is going to be talking about our brand new Resident Engagement Toolkit and give you some ideas on how exactly you could increase and improve resident engagement in long-term care home operations. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chloe to get started, and I'm going to hang out in the background. Welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Steph. So let's get into it. So this toolkit was developed out of a research project, and our research team consisted of a variety of people. We have residents on our research team, members of OARC. We had researchers, of course, with expertise in long-term care and aging. And we also had knowledge users on our research team. A key concept for our research and of the toolkit, of course, is what is resident engagement? When we refer to resident engagement in our toolkit, as Steph mentioned, we are specifically talking about engaging residents in home level decisions, not in personal care or sector-wide decisions. Another way I like to explain this is any decision that affects multiple residents in the home. We are interested in seeing how we can actively incorporate the residents' needs, values, preferences, and perspectives into these home level decisions. Resident engagement also occurs in a continuum. So at an early level of engagement, you might think of informing residents, and as you engage residents on a deeper level, you can look to collaborate or even empower them, and so they can get more and more involved in the decisions that happen in the home. Now I'll turn it to Gail to explain a little bit about why should you engage residents.
Thanks very much, Chloe. So there's really several reasons why we should look to engaging residents, starting at a basic right of the residents to be able to influence the place that they call home. Anything within that home that affects one's life and one's well-being. We also have the ability to then improve home policies and activities if you engage residents in those kind of questions, projects and gatherings. Collaborating to ensure resident focus decision-making is another good reason, as well as mobilizing resources for residents. The resident satisfaction would increase if you engage residents on the decision-making panels and projects. And also, we would be challenging stigma and changing attitudes as we are in the midst of a culture change movement towards resident-centric decisions and handling within our homes. We would have the benefit of changing those attitudes. Also, we have the ability to enable freedom of choice and opportunities to be involved, the ability to exercise initiatives and responsibilities of the residents. It also aligns with residents' needs. Right now, residents are wanting to be involved in helping form the place that they call home. After all, we live here. And who better to have a say in what's important to us, to make changes that will be positive and beneficial to the residents individually and collectively. I think also, of course, we all recognize that we have legislation now that has mandated that there be a resident on every home's quality improvement committee, so that there's an involvement of the residents in the decisions that are going to be taken from a quality improvement standpoint. The last reason I think also is as residents become engaged, as residents and staff become engaged, I think that there's a positive aspect to what they learn from each other. I think that the relationship becomes better and stronger, and as it will with management or leaders, it can't help but improve relationships. within the home of those teams. So really, there's so many reasons why, and I'm sure you can think of others that I haven't touched on or mentioned, and all of those are are great reasons why to engage residents. I kind of sit back and say, with all of those things at your fingertips, why not engage residents? Why aren't we actively engaging residents? Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you, Gail. That's a great point of just asking why not? This is the residents' home after all. And even in our research interviews, it was very clear that every resident brings a unique perspective, unique experience. They all come with full lives before coming into long-term care. And why not engage residents who have all this experience that they have to offer? Another key concept of our research and the toolkit is co-design. And co-design is a way to collaborate with residents. In our toolkit, we define it as working together residents with home leadership, team members, and others through every step of a project or initiative. As I mentioned, this toolkit was something that was also co-designed with residents and is something that we encourage and provide strategies for in the toolkit. Jim, would you be able to share a little bit of what co-design has come to mean to you?
A lot of what I have to say has already been said, but I think when you approach this, you realize that the toolkit that we're presenting deals with the how and the when. The when is very obvious, I would think. It means always. If it affects residents, residents should be involved. If you use the word home in a meaningful way, the resident of the home is there and has input. But not only input, which is necessary, that's an input that comes from a knowledge that other people don't have. Residents alone are in the home 24/7, 365. That is very significant. There are things that we know and have experienced that others do not know unless they tap into that resource. And co-design is a way of doing it. This is a toolkit, it's practical. And basically there is only one tool in the kit, and that is co-design. But co-design is a Swiss Army knife, if you have the idea of that, the versatility, the adaptability. The booklet is bringing together best practice. A lot of you listening to this and interacting with it will know, hey, we've done this, we've always done that. But it's a compilation and it's an encouragement to use a variety of approaches to be there, but is to form a shared partnership, a cooperation, a collaboration. If it affects the resident in any way, the residents should be involved in the decision making. I don't think there's a desire on the part of residents to make the decisions, but it's to help the people that have to make the decision at the bottom line make better decisions. And it's a way to give them the knowledge, the information, and to know how things are going to affect people. We are people, and that has to remember that as people, we not only have rights, but we are worthy of respect. And we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Jim. I think you said it loud and clear. Residents want to be heard, they want to be involved. So next I'll speak a little bit more specifically on how the toolkit was developed. As I mentioned, this is a third part of a three-part research project. We started off with doing scoping reviews on resident engagement, where we synthesized 62 articles on 59 unique studies, and that was where we found or the beginnings of where we found all the different home aspects that residents could be engaged in. And it was surprising to us that we had found studies even from 40 years ago. And when in those papers from 40 years ago, listing the barriers, we found that a lot of what they were speaking to really resonated with what we had seen and experienced today. Next, we went on to do interviews. Having discovered what has been done in the past through the scoping reviews, we wanted to know what was currently happening in homes, and specifically what were the barriers and facilitators to resident engagement in the current long-term care context. With the information from the scoping reviews and the interviews, we used that to create the toolkit and to inspire us to try to create a practical resource that addresses the barriers that we heard and inspire all the different methods of engagement and areas of engagement that residents can be involved in. And on a side note, this research would not be possible without our funders, so we thank CIHR, Canadian Frailty, and Pearly Health for sponsoring this work. So as I mentioned, the toolkit is a co-designed resource to inspire meaningful resident engagement and home-level decisions. As it is a co-design process, we not only had input from the residents on our research team, but we also had 2 focus groups with home leaderships, mostly administrators. We had about 11 to 12 administrators per group, and in these focus groups, they helped us determine the direction of how this resource format should be and the key content that it should have. They also helped understand what would be a practical resource for home leaders to use. Further along into the toolkit development, we had sector partner experts from various associations and researchers also review this toolkit to make sure that it was relevant to the sector as a whole. And we also consulted with the REAL group, OARC's Resident Expert Advisor Leaders group, to make sure that the stories inside the toolkit and the toolkit content was reflective of their perspectives as well. So I mentioned earlier through the research, here's the list of the different aspects of home for engagement. This list was compiled from looking at the different ways residents were involved through the scoping review and the interviews. I'll take some time, I won't read it all out loud, but for just everyone to reflect on some of these list items might surprise you. I think food and dining might be a common one, but perhaps something like human resources or day-to-day operations might not be something that everyone has considered that you can include residents to be a part of. I'll explain a couple of the definitions just so that's clear. So physical environment refers to the planning and designing of the physical environment around the home. And this is more than just furnishing and more than just decor. It also includes the accessibility or safety concerns, even stuff like lighting of the spaces in the home. Recreation and occupational activities includes things like the recreation programming that happens in the home. Day-to-day operations can range from how the newsletters get sent out to the way the laundry happens in the home, welcome tours, or even if there's pets in the home and how they get taken care of. Community connections in our definition in the toolkit is specifically referring to connections with the local community outside of the long-term care home. So connecting with other societies, clubs, or religious or spiritual communities. And services includes things like if there's dental or aesthetic services that get offered in the home or even internet, and how residents can help decide on what services the home provides. There's many different ways to engage residents in the home. Something that might be top of mind for most here are residence councils, as they are mandated in every home. But it's also very impactful to engage residents through getting their individual feedback And this can happen through walking around in the home and speaking directly with residents. There's also resident to resident as a way of engaging residents, where you have resident representatives speak with their peers to share home information and share news, and also collect their peers' feedback on changes that happen in the home. Ultimately, the foundation of strong resident engagement is a strong and trusting relationship between the residents and the home. Gail and Jim, is there anything you would like to add to this or chime in as to why this might be?
Excuse me, I think that the relationship between the residents and the administration is at the forefront of a successful implementation of resident engagement. The administrator of the home sets the tone, and everyone else follows suit. So everyone else in management and staff are going to take their cue from the administrator. So the relationship between the residents and the administrator is a key component of what makes up a successful relationship. And there has to be trust between those groups. There has to be knowledge between the residents and the administrator. The residents need to know who the administrator is. I've heard stories about some members of resident councils going to ask other residents, do you know the administrator's name? And to somewhat of a surprise, the answer was no. So, it's not conducive for creating this strong relationship with the home. So, it's really important for residents to know the administrator, get to know them a little bit, and for the administrator to get to know the residents. And what better way for the administrator to find out what the residents are feeling and thinking and wishing for than to speak to them personally. So I think that's paramount.
To further pick up on what Gail's saying about the strong relationship, it's basically getting to know you, but not just to know who the administrator is, but what the administrator believes, and to be taking every occasion to talk to those beliefs, those ideas, those principles, to have meaningful conversations, as well as just the familial kind of conversation. How your wife, how the kids doing, that kind of thing. That establishes a bond, a basic bond, but that also makes it possible to see some of the other issues that go deeper than that affect everybody in the home. So it's being known, but knowing what you stand for and what you're trying to do. It's using various occasions, formal, informal, to talk about what you believe in, how you believe in, and get residents involved in that kind of presentation as well. It's an ongoing relationship that is renewed daily in any chance you can get. One of the difficulties of being an administrator that I see is that there is an awful responsibility to do bureaucratic things. That they can be good administrators in terms of handling the paperwork, the computer work, the committee work, all of those things outside. That's difficult because that takes you away from the most important people there, the people you are there to serve, the residents. It is our home. It's your home.
I think it also changes residents in the minds of management and staff from a base of residents or a collection of room numbers or a collection of medical issues to individuals. If you have a personal relationship with individual residents, then you stop seeing them as part of a collective and you see them as an individual. You know something personal about them. And isn't that what we should all be hoping for and striving for, is to have a personal connection?
One of the bonuses of this is that when you have this kind of conversation, when it's necessary to have a difficult conversation, it comes a lot easier and goes down and is received a lot easier.
Thank you. Thank you both. I believe now we can take some time to go over questions specifically about the toolkit. And in the meantime, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pull up the toolkit for a preview while we chat about it.
Thanks, Chloe, Jim, and Gail. It was nice to hear all of your comments and your experiences with the creation of the toolkit and what it means to you and how you foresee it impacting the day-to-day lives of residents across the province. I do have some questions, Chloe. If you'd like, I can get into them. And just for the benefit of those in the audience, if you are a resident who's frequently interacted with us through the resident forums, or even as a member of our provincial Real group, then you may be used to turning on your camera, unmuting yourselves, and speaking freely during those sessions. But this is in the webinar format, so unmuting yourself and turning on your camera have been disabled for all audience members. It's not just you who's having an issue with your tech. This is the Zoom webinars run this way. But we do still want to hear from you. And so in the Q&A box, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, you would be used to using the chat feature. The chat feature also is disabled for the webinar, but there's a new box called Q&A, and that's where we would really welcome you to enter your questions there. We can see them on our end, and we'll pose those to our panel here. Okay, I hope that clears some things up. I don't want anyone to feel like they've been excluded or we're picking on you. We don't want to hear from you. We certainly do. Just a different format this time. Okay, so for our panel members, Chloe, Jim, Gail, what is your favorite part of the toolkit? And I guess anyone can go.
I can go. My favorite part by far is the spotlights. And I think as you read through the toolkit, you'll recognize that there's a lot of good information in the toolkit about how to engage residents and how to remove barriers and how to evaluate the quality of the engagement. But then there's these spotlights, and the spotlight is like a mini story about something that has actually taken place in a resident's home. So my favorite spotlight is number 4. It comes from Queen's Garden in Hamilton, excuse me, and it's about a resident and then a group of residents who recognized that their pathways were overgrown and that it made it difficult for wheelchairs to get around. And they thought that there was an opportunity to, oh, thanks. I see it up on the screen. They thought that there was an opportunity to improve this area and at the same time make it a little more beautiful and to make it more usable for the residents. And so they took it upon themselves to initiate to pose the question to management and suggest that this be undertaken. So they had to, discuss things like finances and opportunity and outdoor space usage and contractors to come in. Like it just was amazing how much, once the decision was accepted, or once the proposal was accepted, it was amazing how many different aspects of the home that the residents engaged in. And the end result, as you can see, is a beautiful, usable, covered patio with lovely fresh flowers and, growing, and birds, and butterflies. And I mean, it's just a lovely space to go out and visit. So to me, it demonstrates all of the best things about engaging residents.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gail. And that's so interesting to see that these spotlight stories actually took place in homes across the province. So these are real life examples of what was done, how it worked, how they overcame the barriers that may have been present. Really neat. So it has been done before. Awesome.
I think the spotlights are definitely my favorite too. And something I like that we did with the spotlights is we added these adapt to your home sections, because we recognize every home is different. And it's easy to think of barriers when you read these spotlights. As inspiring as they are, they can sometimes feel far away. And so I really like these little adaptation tidbits. And I also wanted to share my second favorite part of the toolkit, which is the organizational resident engagement assessment. And the reason I like this is I think it's such a great conversation opportunity to have between the home and the residents' leaders. Um, with this assessment, we encourage the residents to complete how they wish to be engaged in which aspects, and then be able to compare that with what the home leadership thinks. And I think it's just such a nice conversation opportunity, and opportunity even for a surprise to see where the residents in your home specifically want to be involved.
That looks like a really great conversation starter. I do like this page too. Thank you for sharing that. Um, okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is how can residents use this toolkit? Is this a resident engagement toolkit? How do you see residents using this?
I see the resident being aware of what the policy, the practice is, and to be acknowledged for themselves as persons, persons with ideas, persons with needs, and to do that. And ultimately, by this kind of engagement, you come at some of the more difficult aspects of living in LTC.
Hmm.
The isolation, the boredom, the repetition, and the lack of purpose. This kind of thing deals with these three aspects, which are the major causes of mental illness. And it's a chance to come alive, to be recognized, to have a purpose, to feel that you're part of something, that you have influence on it. As one of our deceased members always said, and it was her mantra, I came in LTC to live, not to die. So it's come alive, participate, take part. This is how you can do it. You can take advantage of this situation. You see these people, you hunt them out, you engage, and it becomes mutual.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, what we've heard is not all residents know that they can get involved in home operations. And I mean, Gail, you mentioned earlier, it's the right thing to do, but it's also legislated, right? And so maybe this is a first step for some people living in long-term care to even realize, yes, I didn't know that we had a say in what the outdoor spaces look like, or that we had a say in the the timing of activities or of things that are taking place in the home that we live in, that we could shape the place we call home. So thank you for that.
Well, legislation is an interesting idea too, because some people might think that I've got a residence council. I'll check off that box. My residents are engaged, over and done, out, tick, tick. And engagement goes much deeper than that. It's continuous.
Right. So residence council is one opportunity for residents to be involved and engaged in the home, but it's not the only opportunity. Awesome. Gail, did you want to say something about that one? How residents can use the toolkit?
I think that I would encourage residents to have a look at the toolkit because it will educate them on what they might be, that they might not be aware of. Stephanie, you touched on it. Some residents don't even know what they're allowed to do or allowed to get involved in. It certainly would give them more of an idea about what their abilities are within the long-term care home, and give them some structure, give them some clues as to where they can go to get involved, and just get them talking. I think it's like anything. The more you talk about something and are able to get excited about it, then it's kind of like wildfire. It starts to spread, and there starts to be this momentum that's built. And I think that for me, that would be what I would hope would come out of sharing the toolkit within the long-term care home through resident council and through conversations.
Great, thank you. Earlier you mentioned, I think Jim, Gail, and Chloe, all three of you mentioned that the relationship between residents and the long-term care home administrator or executive director is important. Do you have any suggestions or ideas for how a administrator or leader of a long-term care home can get to know residents?
Be visible and be available, I think, are probably the two easiest ways to go about engaging residents. Be available all the time. Don't be locked in your office doing all that required paperwork. Make a habit of getting out maybe in the morning for 15 or 20 minutes and walking a hallway, and stopping and saying hello, or going into the dining room when folks are having breakfast, and stop at tables and just ask, how are you doing? What do you like doing here? How's your food? Whatever the questions are, to engage the residents in conversation. And I think the more you get to know the residents and get a resident's viewpoint of the familiarity of what's going on, then the better educated you are as an administrator, and then the better able, hopefully, that you are to understand the resident's perspective.
I think also might put a term to what Gail's describing there. And this is the old classic management by walking around, being there, seeing what's going on in the building, being present at activities. This may mean coming in the evening to look at a music program, but show that you support the activity. Show that you want to see that the activity is beneficial. See who goes. See how they respond. And it's been a theme that I've talked about for a number of years. Make sure you've got good music. Music is a way of getting to people and bringing them together.
I just want to add a little bit of a plug for anyone who is wrestling with this question of how to to build relationships in your home, we do have a list of tips and suggestions on page 11 and 12 of our toolkit that can really be summarized, as Gail said, of being visible and being known.
Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Chloe. And something that we've heard along the way is, well, there's nobody in my home, there's no residents in my home who are interested in that. Or there's nobody in my home who's interested in looking at the financial statements of the home, for example. And to Jim's, I'm picturing what Jim's saying, see who's attending different activities, get to know the residents in the home. Maybe you just haven't come across them yet. Maybe they do exist in your home and you're just not sure who to ask, which resident to ask. And they haven't volunteered their services because they're not aware that they can get involved in those things. So really the relationship, getting to know the people who live in your home is an important first step. Um, there's
And
yeah, sorry, Gail.
I was just going to add that I think also as soon as you start to have some successes, promote those, make them known, brag about them, so that as more residents hear that it is possible to get engaged and to have a positive outcome. I think the more that might get involved or that might start to think a little differently about, I don't want to get involved because nothing ever changes. You can kind of change that mindset as soon as you have some things to celebrate as accomplishments. So don't be afraid to brag.
Yeah, great point. Sometimes that's something that we forget to do, right? Is celebrate the successes because we got to keep moving. There's always something new to turn your focus to, but celebrating the successes is so important. And that's a suggestion that we give when we hear from homes that are struggling with getting people involved, even in their residence council, is people need to know what they're signing up for, what the work of the council is, what success you've had, so that they're motivated to attend and to be part of it. Thanks for reminding us of that. There are some questions that have come in the chat that are somewhat similar to one that came in through registration, and it's related to there's always a lot of work happening in long-term care. People are busy. They want to do resident engagement. They want to involve residents in things, but they're busy and they are looking for how to make resident engagement part of their everyday work versus an additional or separate task altogether. So any ideas for how to like some first steps maybe. Maybe it's even first steps of how to build this into your daily routine rather than viewing resident engagement as its own separate task.
Yeah, I think the first thing is communication. Excuse me. Um, as residents hear about the opportunities that they could get involved in, it becomes natural then. And for staff, they get to know who's involved in different activities, and it's not an extra task for them because they just automatically know who's going to go to the food and dining committee. So it's not like they're having to stop at 20 rooms and ask them, where you wanting to go, and then arranging for a porter. So yeah, I think that for me, the first thing would be communication to the residents so that they're aware of what's going on and can get involved. And then the rest of it just sort of happens organically.
Yeah, you reminded me of something that has come up in other forums that we've had, but this was about not thinking of resident engagement as a separate thing. So let's say in your home, residents want to know about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? They want to learn more about it. They want to be part of it. And you've already got existing training for team members. Rather than creating a separate training for residents or a separate presentation or program for residents to learn about the topic, see how you can adapt your existing committees or your existing presentations for team members, your existing team member education, so that residents can participate as well. We're hearing more and more that education sessions are taking place in the home areas. Residents are there in the home areas. So if it's something that, you know, you're not sharing private, confidential information, just an information session on a particular topic that you want to train your team members on, invite residents. And not everyone will want to be involved or able to be involved, but there may be some people who are. And you, like Gail said earlier, you'll learn something from them, they'll learn something from you, and only positive things come from involving residents, from what we've heard, from the examples in the spotlights and the research that we've done. Chloe, I'm sorry, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking off of what Gail said, something that came to mind is just being mindful of who's at the table. I think for most decisions, um, there's usually a group of people around the table to make that decisions. And so being mindful of our residents part of that table is a natural way, but also hearing about the resident leaders in their homes. I've heard of homes who involve the resident leaders in very intentional ways. The resident leaders are still part of the same committees that are happening in the home anyway, but their role is intentional in seeking feedback from their fellow residents and speaking on behalf of their peers, but also, yeah, going out and sharing the home information and getting, yeah, just really bringing the resident perspective to life. I think being intentional with what the resident leader's role is and how they can, if there's a specific question that they can ask to the other residents to gather feedback, that's another easy way to increase the amount of resident engagement that goes into the decisions that are being made.
I think also once you have residents engaged in a project or a committee, it's important to look upon that gathering as unbiased, not, no imbalance of power. Everyone at the table has an equal and an equally important or an equally valid reason for being there, and are deserving of being heard. And so while there's going to be some occasions where input from a resident is just not possible to be enacted within the home, it can't always be that way, because if so, you're not conducting a collaborative group or meeting. You're just, that's just tokenism. So I think you need to go into that. Everybody needs to go into that joining of minds with the same idea of, we're going to be working together. Everybody has a right to be heard, and collaboration and compromise maybe are the two C's that you should be following. It's like Chanel, the intertwined C's, collaboration and compromise.
And I will acknowledge resident engagement takes effort, but I hope that through our presentation, you'll see that the value far outweighs the effort that you need to put in.
Thank you, Chloe. I'm going to turn my attention to some questions that have come in through the Q&A. And this one, we're so pleased to have partners from the Ministry of Long-Term Care participating in this webinar today. And a question has come in from one of the ministry colleagues. They say they work at the Ministry of Long-Term Care. If there is one important thing you would like the ministry team to know about in the toolkit, what would it be? Ooh, that's a toughie. Who would like to take that one?
Wow.
I think maybe the ministry might well be of service if it reviewed the demands that it was making upon the administrators, upon their times in terms of the kind of inspections, the kind of reporting, the kind of follow-up, and looking more definitely at the meaning of the word quality.
While this isn't something that's in the toolkit, I think that something that would be really helpful from a ministry perspective is if they would analyze what's in the toolkit and see if it's something that they can put their words, their backing behind. And communicate that to the rest of the long-term care homes, that this is a document that has value and can go a long way to engaging residents within your home.
Thanks, Gail. Thank you, Jim. Okay, I do want to acknowledge that we've had several requests coming through the question and answer box related to getting a hard copy of the toolkit. So a printed hard copy of the toolkit. We do understand and recognize that residents like having a hard copy of documents to review. At this time, we are unable to print and distribute hard copies of the toolkit. However, the toolkit is available online. The link will be sent out with the recording of this webinar. It's also available on our website if you want to do some searching on your own before receiving the link. In addition to that, I wanted to share that a French version of the toolkit will be made available in the coming weeks. It's currently out for translation, so that will also be available.
I will add, there is a hard copy being created, so it'll probably be out in the next month or two. And I think this is something our OARC coaches, if you would like a copy, you can get in touch with your regional coach to be able to get it.
Thanks, Chloe. Okay, there's a question about accessibility of the toolkit, and we wanted to share this version of the toolkit that you see has gone back and forth numerous times with accessibility in mind. We started with a version that was size 12 font, and it's grown over the weeks and months that this has been reviewed. Chloe or Gail or Jim, do you have any comments you'd like to share, or any of your experience with making things accessible for residents?
Oh, other than every time we increase the font size, we have to redo the layout because the pictures don't fit anymore. Oh dear.
Right. So the toolkit went from originally being around 35 pages to its current version of 66 pages. For that reason, that the font size, one of the reasons was that the font size was increased several times. So
Yeah.
we do hope that its current version is fairly easy for people to look at and understand. But if you do have any issues with accessibility or any suggestions for us, we do welcome those. You could send those to actually, when we send out the recording, we can get an email contact for you, either Chloe or just our info@ontarc.com.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily an accessibility benefit per se, but the toolkit does include a table of contents. So it makes it easier if you're looking for a specific section to look that up. Not all documents include a table of contents, but once it got to be a certain size, we thought we better help folks be able to find specific areas that they want to focus on. So that was included.
Yeah, and within the table of contents and throughout the document, when it references different pages, everything is hyperlinked. So hopefully it's easier to flip to exactly where you need. You just click on the subheading or the hyperlink.
I'd like to return to the previous question, and that's the role of the ministry. with regard to the toolkit.
Great.
Uh, the cost of distributing the toolkit to 600 homes is beyond the capacity of OARC. I would like to see the ministry endorse the toolkit, and we may need to get into some discussion around that as to what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and we'll bat that one back and forth if we have to. But I would like to see that endorsation and it to be made concrete by distributing it to all the homes in the province. And maybe setting up a certain amount of study sessions of it. But I would like to see the ministry get on board.
Thanks, Jim. And when you ask, you will get an answer. So that's another unspoken benefit of having residents involved in the work that you're doing is that oftentimes residents will ask for the things that you yourself are not comfortable asking for. So thank you, Jim. You took the words out of our mouths, hearts, minds. But yeah, it would be lovely to see a copy in every long-term care home. You're right. Thank you. Thank you
You'll
for
need more than one.
more than one. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a good lawyer. Don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
Thank you, Jim. I want to end, we're at 2:56, so we do still have a couple more minutes, but I wanted to share something that came in through the chat. The person is anonymous, so I can't thank them. You know who you are, but it's just an idea about how long-term care leadership can get to know residents better. It says managers can ask for an invitation to residents council so they can communicate that they're open to ideas, visits, suggestions, and at the time issue their own open invitation for residents and their families to become involved in the goings on of the home. Make it a habit, send in for or let the residents know what's going on in the home, what's coming up, what successes, any changes in leadership or new team members, students working in the residents' homes, so they need to be aware, sharing, and grateful for the residents. Thank you so much to the person who shared that in our Q&A. That's awesome. And we've got several comments coming in just thanking our panel, Jim, Gail, Chloe, for all your hard work in organizing the webinar, and people saying they're looking forward to using the toolkits. Lovely. And we have a message from Dee, who's OARC's executive director. Dee would like to add that just as the tone is set by administrators, ministry leaders have the opportunity to model and communicate how important authentic resident engagement is to the well-being of residents. The legislation uses words that point to resident-centered care and emphasizing that the building is home, leading positive culture change. Awesome. Thanks, Dee. Okay. Well, thank you. Any final words, Chloe, Jim, and Gail?
Well, yesterday on our webinar, I said, just have fun with it because there's so many opportunities to engage residents authentically and as equal contributors. And I think that as you get more and more involved and embrace the resident input, it's an opportunity to just have some fun and see where it takes you. I think that everyone will be surprised at the outcome.
I would love to hear for anyone who adopts the toolkit what you end up doing with it. We do have our contacts at the last page of our toolkits for you to share any stories of your own home's resident engagement that we can share with other homes across the province. And so, yeah, just sharing the knowledge.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate having you here today with us as we officially on our platform launch the OARC's Resident Engagement Toolkit. Look forward to hearing how you've used it, what you think of it, and if you could take a moment to fill in the survey that'll pop up on your screen when you close the window. We'd love to hear your comments about what was presented today. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Gail. And thank you, Chloe.
Thank you.
Bye for now.